So as a candidate for promotion in the police, how are you going to create a culture where people want to stay and not leave? Or how are you going to create a culture where well-being is front and center of everything we do? These are really tough questions, forward-facing questions that are starting to appear on numerous promotion boards all around the country. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about how you can answer that question and score really high marks without sounding vanilla and boring. All right, so if you've not been on one of these videos before, I'm Brendan from Bluelight, and over the past 28 years now, I've been supporting people for promotion boards, for specialist interviews. Over the past 10 years, really focusing on this because I retired 10 years ago. So I've been in the police sector now for 38 years, and there's not much I don't know about the promotion process. Now, forward-facing questions aren't particularly new. I had forward-facing questions on my promotion board to sergeant in 1994. So they've been around for a while, but they seem to be emerging, they seem to be more popular, maybe because rear-facing questions, as in, can you tell me about a time when, have become very sort of staged and rehearsed. And I think interviewers and forces are starting to get a little bit sick of people just rolling out, tick box CVF answers. Whereas they're looking for the future leaders of tomorrow, and what better type of question to ask than how in the future are you going to do something? Now, the questions that they ask you for forward-facing questions are going to revolve around the sort of problems that police forces all across the country have. And this is something we focus on in the one-to-ones that I do and in the group exercises I do. Do these group exercises, these group webinars once a week, every Sunday evening. You can check the links below for how to join them. This is where over 500 serving officers in the group get together, not all at once. It's normally a small group, but they get to watch all the webinars as well, recordings of the webinars. So there's plenty of material there for you to get stuck into. Over 2 years worth of webinars now. An incredible success as well. Very rarely do we hear of any of the group members failing their board. But this is how we do it. So I'm going to walk you through actually something that I did the other day with a client who we were doing some one-to-one work, preparing for exactly this sort of question. And the question I asked was, how are you going to create a culture of well-being on your team? How are you going to ensure that people want to stay in the service as opposed to wanting to leave? Now, the answers that came up, I'm just going to refer to my notes here. I'm going to speak to people regularly, find out what's going on in their lives, see what problems they have, and see what I can do to resolve those problems. I'm going to ensure that flexible working policy is something that's available to everyone, and also on top of that, making sure that the time off policy is something that I can introduce. I'm also going to make sure that people don't feel overworked. So on training days, when things are starting to get critical with things like the crime queues, we're going to spend a whole day looking at those crimes so we can reduce the crime queues so people feel happier in the workplace. Yeah, I know, vanilla, boring. Were you on the edge of your seat? No, you weren't. And that's the same reflection my client had. They just sort of finished their answer and just went, it's not very good, that, is it? No, it's not. We've got to do a lot better than this. We've got to make sure that at that promotion board, your assessors are on the edge of their seats, that they're listening to everything you're saying, thinking, I'd be an idiot to fail this person because this person is going to be awesome in the rank of sergeant. Because ultimately, the question they're asking themselves is, not to the extent to which you've ticked all the boxes on the marking guide, although that's important. What they're really thinking as a superintendent, as a chief inspector is, can I see this person as a sergeant on one of my teams at 4 in the morning where everything's going pear-shaped, where everything's collapsing around them? Can they hold their team together? Am I going to walk in at 7 o'clock to some complete and utter dumb? Or am I going to walk in thinking Sergeant Jones was on duty last night? It doesn't really matter what happened. I know the wheel might be wobbling, but it's still going to be on. And that's what you've got to convince them. You've got to convince them that you are the solution to the problems that they've got across the force and also locally, divisionally, or in a borough that you're going to get posted to. And so we worked on an alternative. I'm going to talk you through a little bit of what that alternative involved. So first of all, we followed a better structure. Now, the structure I recommend for forward-facing questions is, first of all, why? Why is this thing so important? Why is retention so important? Why is well-being so important? And then we move on to, well, if it's that important, then these are the things I'm going to do to ensure that this problem has a solution. And we look at just 3 things, not this big shopping list, because what my client was doing before was the start of a shopping list, to be honest, and it was all very vanilla and all very boring and all the same old that other candidates are going to come out with. And that's not going to be you. You're going to be the one that comes out with something awesome that has them thinking, that's interesting. I've not even heard of that. I've not even thought of that. That's where we need to be, folks. And that's the sort of feedback my clients get, by the way. Just last month, one of them was interviewed for the rank of inspector, fast-track inspector by an ACC and a chief superintendent. It was meant to be an hour-long interview. It lasted 2 hours. Why? Because at the very end of it, they gave him feedback to say some really fascinating ideas there that no matter what happens in the national fast-track process, I want to progress with you. That was exceptional. And there and then, he knew he'd passed. That's what we're after, folks. I mean, just, it's not live this. I was going to say, give me a hands up or give me an eye or give me a yes if this is what you're looking for, but it's not live. Ah, damn it, forgot. But anyway, just have a think to yourself, is that what you're looking for? Is that what you want to be, or do you want to be vanilla and boring? And so we came up with a brilliant hook, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that hook towards the end of this video. There's a bit of a teaser for you. Make sure you keep watching this video, because this hook is one that's going to nail it at the very start of your answer. And it is so relevant as well. It's so relevant. And when I say a hook, what I mean is something that's going to catch their imagination, something that's going to get them sitting up thinking, I really need to listen to this. And so then we walked into, actually we came up with 4 things that this individual is going to do with their team. And importantly, 1 thing that they're going to do for themselves as well. And that's really, really important. So just touching on some of those things, we came up with the concept of check-ins, both on an individual basis and on a team basis. And we discussed what the content, importantly, what the content of those individual check-ins and team check-ins would be. And these are check-ins on welfare. We looked at things like utilising a training day for welfare reasons, as in a wellbeing walk, just something like that, a wellbeing walk. Other private sector organisations are doing this now. They've been doing it for years. The police are so behind the curve. Some forces are doing this. I see this on Twitter every now and then, how a team has gone for a walk at the mountains or gone for a walk in the woods. But you've also got to describe not just that that's what I'm going to do. We also talked in the one-to-ones, we're going to talk about it more in the group webinars as well, about, more importantly, how you're going to do it. Because simply coming out with a list of what you're going to do is just a shopping list. What you've got to do to get them on the edge of their seats is discuss exactly how you're going to do it. So we used some models and theory from things like motivational interviewing, which works really, really well, exceptionally well. I actually did it to my client. My client has gone away with some commitments as to what they're going to do to look after their welfare. And what I did was basically model the motivational interviewing theory for them so they could see what it was like in action. So that was awesome. What else did we look at? Things like having a sort of check-in on welfare as an agenda item on meetings. I mean, why not? And what else did we look at? Oh yes, we looked at retention. And one of the things that I like to do whenever I can is I like to bring in some research. So we brought in this research here. This is a really, really good open source document, so you can get it without having to sign up to Routledge or any of the other academic publishers. It's called Over and Out, The Damaged and Conflicting Identities of Officers Voluntarily Resigning from the Police Service. It's authored by Sarah Sharman and Gemma Tyson from the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice in the University of Portsmouth. So we used some of this, some of the research within here, really, really exceptional. This is full of promotion ideas, by the way, absolutely packed full of promotion ideas. Whilst this paper talks about the problems and the research that's gone into it and some of the reasons why, it doesn't actually tell you as a sergeant or an inspector how you're going to implement the solutions to these problems. And that's not their job. That's our job, to look at how we're going to utilize research to come up with solutions to modern day problems that the police service has got. One of the biggest problems they alluded to is voluntary resignations. How, let's see, a rise of 72% over the past year, a rise of 72%, and over the past decade, a rise of 196%. Incredible. So if we don't look after the well-being of our officers, people want to leave. So we've got to create that culture where people want to stay. And we looked at things like queuing behaviour in people who have their first doubts as to whether this role is for them. And that's where we looked at things like their personal identity and their work identity. Again, all things alluded to in this research paper, which was really, really interesting, fascinating stuff. So we looked at queuing behaviour and how those one-to-ones, those check-ins are important to identify that queuing behaviour and to bring it out, bring out that queuing behaviour. We talked about exit interviews. Quite frankly, exit interviews are pointless. They're too late. At the point where you're doing an exit interview, it's too late. I guarantee it, 100%, it's just too late. So if you're talking about, I'm going to improve retention through exit interviews, no, you're not. You are absolutely not going to do that. And you're not going to get the truth from people in exit interviews anyway. So instead, we're going to utilize itchy feet interviews. So within that check-in, we're going to do an itchy feet interview, and we're going to utilize the queuing behavior, which has been demonstrated by that individual as the basis for that itchy feet interview. And again, we talked about exactly how we're going to do this. And the how is based on, again, on research. Also some ideas I've got, but bits of ideas that come from different bits of research. We pull them all together when we create something new. So there you go. There you go. Oh, I promised you, didn't I? How does that sound, by the way? Oh, by the end of it, the model goes why, how, and then what. So why is it important? How are you going to do it? No more than 3 things, although we did have 5. I created an exception here because the 5 things were just awesome. And then the last thing is, what's it going to result in? So what will it result in? What will it be like on your team when you implement all of these things? And so the hook, right, this hook's really important. What we talked about was the retention data in your force. Do you know, as a promotion candidate, what your retention figures are like in your force? We're not looking at people who are retiring because they're going to go anyway. You know, I always knew that I was going to go at some point. I wasn't going to stay forever. I actually did 28 years of service. I didn't do my full 30 because I wanted to explore a different career. And that's alluded to in that research document as well, the concept of people having career portfolios. The world has changed. People don't join a job for 30 years anymore. People see themselves as having a 30-year, 40-year career portfolio, and being in the police might just be part of it. It's certainly, I mean, my son and daughter are 11 and 14, and they're already talking that kind of language. They already talk about, I don't want to, you know, it's not I want to be a whatever when I grow up. It's I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do the other. That's how the world is. So we're going to have to get our heads around that, folks. So anyway, going back to the hook, we looked at the percentages of officers leaving who are voluntary resignations and what that track performance looks like over a period of time. And we went deeper than that. We also looked at what percentage of those voluntary resignations are male versus female. And then we also looked at what percentage of those resignations, voluntary resignations, are Black, Asian, LGBT, or any other minority group. Now, I've discussed this with a few other clients in the past, and what they've said is that we don't have that data. Now, there's a massive hook, isn't there? Can you imagine that at the start of your interview? Answer. So the reason why retention is really important, I can tell you why retention is important, because at this moment in time, we are losing people at X rate. A certain percentage are leaving every year, and the trend is going up. One of the things that we're doing really well in this force is to attract people from diverse groups to join. Can I share with you, though, that the qualitative data is telling us that a higher percentage are leaving who are from those minority groups than people from non-minority groups. And what's really scary in this force is we just don't have the data on this. We don't have the data. And if we don't have the data, then there's nothing we can do about it. This is just from my research, talking to the Positive Action team or talking to the various groups that represent minority groups within the force. So there's your hook. There's your hook. So on your team, not only are you going to retain officers and have a higher level of welfare through all the things we discussed, all that detail that we discussed, but you're also going to ensure that people from minority groups who we've taken so much effort to ensure that we recruit them stay, and they don't want to leave because they feel as though it's a place where they can retain their identity, where your team is one that's fully inclusive. And of course, this blends into other answers that you might want to give, because these don't all exist in isolation. So we've also got things like standards of performance. We've also got things like why diversity, equality and inclusion is so important. We've also got things like performance. All of these things interlink with each other. They are not siloed sort of answers. Everything links in with each other. So there you go, folks. Just to sum up, we've gone through how we would actually construct a non-vanilla, a really exciting, on the edge of your seat answer to the question, what are you going to do as a sergeant or inspector to ensure that people want to stay in the police rather than leave? What are you going to do to create this culture of well-being? If you're at this point on the video, then it means that you're really interested in the things that we do here in Bluelight, the things I do. I say we, it's me. So I'd invite you to subscribe. There'll be a button down there somewhere where you can subscribe, press that bell button so that you get notifications whenever I publish one of these videos. And I'm dropping one of these sort of every other day, really, every other day. And ultimately, if you really want to succeed in your promotion board or in your specialist interview, or if you're watching this and you're in the recruitment process, then click the links below. Come and join me on these weekly webinars. They make such an amazing difference. And don't just take my word for it. Take a look at the Trustpilot reviews. And thank you to, by the way, to almost 600 of you who have given me those Trustpilot reviews just over the past 18 months. I've only had the Trustpilot account open for about 18 months, perhaps a little bit over, and almost 600 reviews, which is just amazing. Thank you very much for all of those incredible reviews. I know that you put so much time and effort into them, and I really appreciate it. All right, folks, well, listen, I hope that's been useful for you, and I look forward to catching up with you on one of the one-to-ones or one of the webinars. Bye-bye for now, and take care.